149 for those of you who are keeping score at home of the Bleav in Astros podcast. I'm Jeff Balke with Mike Stanton.
Are we sure that's the right number?
We are confident.
Because last time we were a little iffy, which exact
we were a little
number?
iffy, and I'm going to find out. I can tell you 100% with certainty when I look this up. We are 149.
There you
That's
go.
correct.
Okay.
Which means 150 is coming up next. The big 150. Not that round numbers or any kind of a milestone
celebration.
I don't think so.
No, probably not.
Not really.
Ice cream cake or something.
Yeah, maybe an ice cream cake. Maybe we could. No, we'll just get some of that ice cream inside of the helmet that they have at the Astros game. A little sundae and a helmet. So the Astros went out with more of a whimper than a bang at the end of the season. A really just terrible 2 weeks. Completely cratered their season after sweeping the Rangers. They only won one of their remaining games, and that'll do it. First time the Astros have missed the postseason since 2016. I wrote something for the Houston Press that's going to run tomorrow that basically what I said is if at the beginning of this season, if I were to tell you that the Astros put 26 players on the IL, including 18 at one time, they lost a plus 17 WAR to player injuries,
right?
Multiple pitchers going down with elbow problems, and you lost your closer for the last half of the season, you would probably assume this team would be really, really bad, and you'd be wrong. They ended up, just really 2 games out of the division, barely missed the wild card. By all of those measures, it was a successful year. Unfortunately, in Astroland, we don't really measure successes like that.
Well, we get spoiled.
That's the problem.
And the thing is, I've been thinking about this for a few days, and I really have mixed emotions. Obviously, it's the way it ended wasn't good. You're right. They kind of went out with more of a whimper than they did, any bravado. They didn't play well. Really the only high point you can see was Fromber's last start. Fromber actually went out there and shoved after really struggling, well, basically the second half of the season. But it was just and it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth just the way, because they, one time they were 20 games over 500. They had a 7-game lead, I think. It was just, and then for them to lose that lead, and I don't want to say they went out without fighting, because obviously they were trying to win, but just didn't happen. But then when you step back and you look at the big picture, I completely agree with you. This is a team that drastically overachieved. Even if they had all their horses, all their thoroughbreds in the stable, and they could get out on the field, I go back to one of our early podcasts. I did not think that this was a World Series contending club. I thought they were going to be limited offensively, and that was really maybe the biggest issue that they had this year, that over half their games, they scored less than 4 runs. When they scored 4 runs, they were great, but it was just one of those things. But when you look at the big picture, even like I said, even if they did have Jordan and they had everybody was healthy and the guys came back from the IL the way we expected them to, I still thought that this was a I don't want to say a second tier club, but they were still not going to be picked in the American League. And so I think that this was a team that really, really overachieved overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when you look at their numbers, when you sort of drill down a little bit, and I've done a little bit of that over the last few days, not a ton, but when you drill down into some of the numbers, you kind of see that, okay, they were bottom third in the league in home runs. They were bottom third of the league in hitting with runners in scoring position. Basically, they struggled on offense because they don't hit for power and they don't have good situational hitting. They also, weirdly, as something the Astros haven't normally done over the last 10 years or so, they had a lot of swing and miss this year, which is abnormal for the Astros, swinging a lot of pitches out of the zone. Some of that can be attributed to the fact that they did have to play a lot of younger players, more so than they probably have in the last few years. And so that's gonna be a part of that. That offensive discussion is gonna be a huge part of the offseason, though.
Oh, it is. It is. Well, and listen, the strikeouts, I think it. Yeah, when you look at the trends of Major League Baseball overall,
Yeah.
they don't really look at strikeouts as a big negative.
Right.
It's
If
just
you hit
another
for
out.
power, if you can hit for power, that's the big trigger. It's like if you hit home runs, the strikeouts aren't a big deal. The
Yeah,
Yankees are a perfect example of that.
yeah. So, but and that's the trend over the whole league is
Yeah.
the whole there's the statement that's been used or the saying that's been used over the last several years. The three true outcomes, which
Right.
is what's a strikeout, walk, and home run.
Right.
That's there lies the problem, and we've seen over the last several years strikeout numbers across the league go through the roof because now all
Yes.
of a sudden putting the ball in play isn't in vogue. So, did it finally catch up to the Astros? It did. Did it
Mhm.
finally did the lack of a minor league system catch
Yeah.
up to the Astros? It did.
Mhm.
Anytime a team spends a substantial amount of time in first place, you are not getting high draft picks. And,
Right.
there is a big difference between a top 10 draft pick, top 10
Mhm.
rounds and, a 25th round draft pick. Even if they're
Right.
both first round draft picks, you're not talking about the same talent
Right.
level. And the Astros have done that for the better part of a decade. They just haven't, and we've given them praise because a lot of times the guys that came up, what was it last year? They had one, or the year before had one top 100
Yeah.
prospect, and that was Hunter Brown. He was already in Houston.
Right.
Um, and
2
so
years ago.
2 years ago,
Mhm.
when you look at that, now you can actually go, okay, you know what? That's where they overachieve. But what's the answer going forward? I mean, Dana Brown, one of the main reasons Dana Brown was brought in
Yes.
was to build that minor league system. Now, here's the caveat with Dana Brown. This was really his first season as a true general manager where he had the whole off
Correct.
season. You have to remember you go back to 2024.
It was the
Yeah, he
Jim Crane,
got
Jeff
the
Bagwell show.
right. Well, and he got the job, but he got the job already in the off season. Now he
Mhm.
had to learn the organization. He had, they had to learn him, and so that really wasn't a real representation of
Right.
what Dana Brown could do. Dana Brown did put this team together, but
He did.
again, this was the first time he had ever done this. He hasn't been a general manager before, and he was
Right.
brought in my opinion, he was brought in to bolster the minor league system. And by the way, that takes time.
It
You don't do
does.
that in a year or two.
No.
That takes I mean, you look at Mike Elias when he went into Baltimore. Now he had to build a whole organization,
Mhm.
but gosh, it took him 5 6 years in order for him to get the talent through the draft, through the minor leagues,
Mhm.
and show up at the big league level.
When you just have to look at the Astros' own history for that. I mean, the
Sure.
Astros came in and absolutely cleaned house when Jim Crane took over and Jeff Luna took over. It took them, what, 4 seasons before they were starting to push those draft picks into the major leagues. Another 2 after that before they became competitive. So it's and by the way, the Astros were penalized because they didn't have top draft picks for a couple of years because of the sign stealing scandal.
Right.
They missed out. I think 2 years ago was their first round draft pick in like 3 years prior to
Right.
that.
Yeah.
They're gonna have the 17th pick in this draft this year, so they'll actually have a good, pretty high pick. The picks they've been making have seemingly been pretty good, um,
Yeah.
and they've done a
But
pretty good.
a lot of times the first round picks, the really high
Yeah,
picks, and I said there was a difference between a top 10 and 25. There is.
right.
But first round picks, they're still first round picks.
Of course they are.
It's not like there's only 10 players around the country
Right.
that from the talent pool every single year that can actually play the sport.
Yeah.
But where you really have the issues is when you're missing picks
Right.
or what kind of talent, because if you have the 25th pick in the first round, that means you have the 50th pick in the second round.
Right.
And so that's where the lesser rounds, that's where the talent that you really need to try and find lightning in a bottle, find the diamond in the rough, whatever little statement you want to use. And that's hard to do. That's hard to do.
I think I think one of the other issues that's come up for the Astros, and certainly this has hurt Dana Brown as well, is in building this, you have a lot of attrition just simply because they have had to trade away guys in order to acquire.
Sure.
They did that last season
Yeah.
in particular, and so they've really have depleted it. Now, the farm system, I will say this, and at least one, obviously this year it generated Cam Smith, right? Who
Hmm.
was a trade, but
Sure.
did come over, became their number one prospect, immediately came up. It's generated Spencer Agnetti, who's out, but who has obviously been a success. Um, so it's generated a couple of good guys. What's really going to be interesting, and I really curious about your take on this, is what's going to happen to them in the infield next year,
Hmm.
because Bryce Matthews, by all accounts, looks like a guy who's ready to play in the major leagues. Now, that doesn't mean he will,
Right.
immediately, but it's going to probably be hard to keep this guy out of the major leagues because he's destroying minor league pitching. He hits with power, and he has a relatively low swing and miss rate for a guy that's in the minor leagues.
Hmm.
Um, so but they have a problem in the infield next year, maybe a good problem, I guess you could argue, in that Paredes is back,
Right.
but he's not going to take Carlos Correa's spot at third. Jeremy Pena is going nowhere at short.
Yeah. I think the
Then you've
left
got,
side's pretty set.
yeah, but the right side, you've got Christian Walker, who's still very, very good defensively,
Hmm.
but was not good offensively despite his 25 home runs.
Yeah.
And you've got Jose Altuve, who's aging and is not great defensively at second, who is not obviously playing a lot of left field towards the end of the season. I think that experiment kind of dwindled. You can't just DH him all the time because you've got one Yordan Alvarez, assuming
Yeah.
he is healthy. Obviously, health will play some into it, but you have to wonder going into next season how they're going to juggle that when, by the way, their outfield is a bunch of young guys. I mean, they're going to, that's the
Yeah.
other thing. They're trading off a veteran infield for a bunch of young guys in the outfield.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how they do this, and the way this organization, just like so many other organizations, have been over the last couple of years,
Mhm.
has been, we want athletes. I don't want players that are just keyholed into one position.
Right. That is the
Um,
trend for sure.
and whether it's Bryce Matthews or whomever from the minor leagues, they may be playing a certain position in the minor leagues, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going to play in the big leagues.
That's true.
If you're going to be, if you have if you have a difference making bat,
Mhm.
if you're a good hitter, they'll find a place for you. I mean,
Right.
and this isn't anything new. I mean, look at Alex Bregman played one game in the minor leagues at third base, then he came
Right.
up and
Cam
it
Smith.
can't. Yeah, I mean, these guys, but I mean, Bregman end up being one of the best third basemen in the league from day
Yeah.
one. I mean,
Yeah.
he really was
Well,
just spectacular.
hey, Cam Smith is ranked in the top 3 in right
Right.
fielders in the entire American League, and he never played right
Yeah,
field. So
yeah.
it can happen.
So the point is that these guys are athletes,
Yeah.
and the good thing is when you're talking about even top prospects, when you're talking about young players,
Mhm.
most of the time they're just happy to be there, meaning in the
Sure.
big leagues. And so I'll do whatever you want me to do. Where you try and move a veteran guy, that's why it was such a big deal.
Mhm.
I guess last off season, when the conversation of Jose playing left field was such a big thing because Jose, a former Gold Glover, Silver Slugger, MVP.
Right.
You're talking about the face of the franchise
Yeah.
moving positions. That's a little bit different than a young
Yeah.
guy coming up in minor leagues just wanting big league at bats.
It's gonna be a really, fascinating thing to watch in the winter because conceivably, this is a team that could move a number of things around and to adjust where they're gonna be next season. 2 guys that we should talk about. The Astros don't have a lot of unrestricted free agents. They've got certainly they have some guys going into arbitration. Jeremy Pena
Sure.
into his last season of arbitration, which is going to be interesting to see if they negotiate a new deal with
Which
him.
means he gets
Um,
paid.
yeah, he's going to get paid.
Even in a 1 year deal, he gets
Yeah,
paid.
a number of guys are going to get paid. The Astros will have a little bit of money next year. As I was just looking at the cap numbers, that a couple of people have posted. They probably will have a little bit of money. Um, I think there's two main free agents though. One is Framber Valdez, and the other is Victor Caratini. I think one we can say pretty safely is not going to be back, and one we can say pretty safely very well might be.
Sure.
Victor Caratini, I think, could very easily return. He made $6 million this year, which is a very reasonable contract for a
Oh yeah.
switch hitting backup catcher. I could see the Astros re-upping him, and if Caratini likes playing here, he certainly got plenty of playing time.
Right.
So I think Framber Valdez, I don't think there's any chance Framber Valdez
No.
is back next year.
Well, I mean, listen, there's a couple red flags here. Okay.
He threw at his catcher.
Well, I mean, that is definitely one of them. We know that he can the one of the screws up top can get a little bit loose on
Yeah, it
occasion.
can.
And that passion and that anger is actually part of what makes Fromber good. There's just sometimes it shows up and it's ugly, and we've seen it in the past. This isn't anything new.
No, it's not new.
And apparently the reason he was not pitching well through September and through the second half were the dreads, because he got rid of those and he went out there and shoved for 7 innings. Maybe it's a balance, a balance thing or something.
Maybe through his it's like his equilibrium was a little thrown off by that.
So, I don't think. I mean, show me where Jim Crane has done this, especially with the pitcher. The only one that he's given any extended contract to was Lance McCullers, and we see how that has worked.
That did not play out well.
And so I just don't see him. I mean, heck, he wouldn't even give Hall of Famers. He wouldn't give
not long-term contracts. That's for sure.
And that's what Fromber is going to. He's going to be asking for, and that's what Fromber deserves. I mean, you're talking about one of the most reliable pitchers over the last 6 or 7 years since he's come up.
Right.
I mean, he has spent very little time on the IL. He gives you innings. He's a workhorse. He can give you pitch count. He can do everything that you want him to do in a day and age that you do not have that in Major League Baseball. Almost anyone. So just in that aspect, there is some real value there. And I do not see Jim Crane ponying up the money that it's going to take to get Fromber back.
Well, especially at 31, that age, he's going to be looking for 6 or 7 years, probably.
Yeah, which means he gets 5 or 6. Probably the number. 5. Usually the way it is whatever you think is the reasonable number in the past, you add a year. So 5 is probably the number. So maybe if he has 2 or 3 teams bidding on him, he gets the 6th year. That's how it's worked in the past. We'll have to wait and see. And he's going to be one of the top free agents out there. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And that's just not, especially when it comes to pitching, that is not the pool that Jim Crane likes to dip his toe into.
Out of curiosity, do you think teams are going to be, let's say, cautious with a serious labor deal coming in 2027? I mean,
I don't think so. I had a discussion last night about this, and I'm I don't know if I'm blessed or cursed to have gone through several work stoppages, including the big one in '94. A lot of people don't realize there was one in 1990 also.
There was one in 1990.
It was only a few days, but
it didn't last.
That was right at the beginning of my career.
Yeah, the 94 one killed the Expos. Like, that's basically that. If the new documentary that's out about that, it talks about that.
No doubt because I can tell you for a fact, they had like a 9-game lead. I was playing in Atlanta. We were in the run. We were going to the playoffs every single year.
Yeah, they were tremendous.
Divisions. We weren't beating that team. That team was freaking stacked. And
it probably cost Montreal a team.
It absolutely did. There's no doubt. Because listen, was it Olympic Stadium? Is that what was an armpit? It was terrible. It was in a bad location. It wasn't hard to get to. It just took a long time to get there. It was in the middle of a subdivision. In
not a good stadium just in general.
No, a terrible design. I think it was it the first retractable roof?
I want to say you might have been the very first one. Yeah,
brutal design.
They just didn't have the engineering for that kind of stuff back then. Yeah.
Well, and just the whole idea that it was an umbrella. That's literally what it was.
Yeah,
the top was an umbrella,
and it got shredded.
Yeah, and then they tried to make it a regular, covered
Yeah, that didn't
facility.
work. You
That didn't
can't
work either.
re-engineer you can't re-engineer
Well, they
stuff like
could.
that.
The problem was when they got it down on top of to lower
Mhm.
the roof, and then they were just gonna bolt it in or whatever.
Right.
They couldn't get it all the way to the top of the stadium. There was like a 6 foot gap all the way around, and when it would rain outside, and if it didn't even cover the hole in the
Oh,
top of the stadium.
and it
There
and
was a
it
place
rains,
behind right field.
and let's
I'm
be
sorry, behind
clear.
third base in left field
Yeah.
that it was a waterfall.
Yeah, and
When
let's
I
be
say a
clear.
waterfall, I mean like a
I
substantial
remember.
waterfall. Yeah.
And let's be clear, in April and May and in September, October in Montreal, you do not want to be rained
Brutal.
on. It is
Well,
cold
hey,
as
and
hell.
and here's the thing, it didn't have any heat.
Yeah, right. Well,
So
nothing did
so
back
it
then.
so
No heat,
so
no
yeah,
AC.
so
Ugh.
I mean you have the roof that was
Was this
mostly
Green
covered, but
Bay?
it was open, and you're
This isn't
you're
football.
in Montreal.
This
I
isn't
mean, it was brutal. It was
This is
cold.
not football. I remember a great story that I was told years ago about the legend Hakeem Olajuwon. The first he was going to play a game in Denver at the old McNichols Arena in Denver, and they were in a car. This was with Tim Frank, who used to be the Rockets media relations guy. Now he's the media relations guy at the NBA. And he said that he was in the car with Hakeem, and they rode past Mile High Stadium, right, which
Mhm.
is going to be replaced soon, weirdly
Yeah.
enough. They rode right past Mile High Stadium, and it was snowing outside. And this was in the middle of winter. And Hakeem said, "What do they do over there?" And they said, "Hakeem, that's Mile High Stadium. That's the football stadium." He goes, "They play football there outside, in the winter?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do
Yeah,
they
they
want
do.
to die?" That was just like, and I'm like, I understand that sentiment
Hey,
because
one of the true home field advantages.
yes, I mean,
Oh, big
just
time.
just
Even in
ruthless.
baseball, it was.
Oh,
Even
for sure, absolutely.
I could tell
So
you, we'd go. I would run in from the bullpen in day one of a series and get to second base, and dude, I'm putting my hands on my knees.
I can't.
It
Oh,
was brutal.
I can't even imagine with snow
Anyways,
and the altitude and oh,
yeah, to
boy,
get
vey.
to get back
Yeah,
on yes, that 94 definitely killed. Because if listen, if they even if they make the playoffs and do well, but much less maybe win the World Series, they get a new
yeah.
stadium downtown. And listen, Montreal is on the short list of expansion cities. Uh, Still in Major League Baseball, and they've had financing for a new downtown stadium
Mhm.
for several years now,
Oh, yeah.
but they just got to get Major League Baseball to put it in. So
Yeah,
um,
complicated.
very complicated.
It's
And
complicated.
when you have a situation that didn't work the first time around,
That's
very
always a
reluctant to re up in that situation. Uh,
that's you've seen that in the NBA with Seattle, even though it was unfair to Seattle what
it
happened to
was
them.
yeah, it
They
was one
didn't
of the big
deserve to
problems
lose
with
a
going back
game.
to DC. They didn't.
Right,
There was a
another c
lot of
yes,
people did not think that DC could handle a big league club
yes,
because the last time when it was the Senators, when it ended up being the Texas Rangers,
right,
um, it didn't work. Now they were never a good team,
right.
ever, ever a good team.
It
So
happens in a
that
lot of
that
sports
doesn't
like
help.
that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sports like that. You see it in football, where you have teams that like they didn't, that essentially the only reason we have the Texans is because Bob McNair, like because the people in Los Angeles totally fell apart in their a bid. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason Houston should have gotten a football team over LA, but LA just was so inept and couldn't get their
Well,
business
how about what we
together.
saw last Sunday with
Oh,
the Titans playing the Texans, both 0-3?
mm,
Didn't
mm,
it was one of the things that crossed my mind. I said that doesn't bode well
mm.
for Houston football franchises.
To to quote one of my favorites, Martin Short, whenever he finds something frustrating, is, "Mm." That's,
Yeah.
I just feel like that's I
Right.
remember so many things about the Oilers, and I can't. It's not even worth talking about because they were an absolute Columbia blue stain on the city of Houston
Yeah.
for many many years.
Earl Campbell left, Earl Campbell right,
Oh,
Earl Campbell up the middle.
right. Give it to Earl. Give it to Earl. Give it to Earl. Punt. I remember that
Yeah,
was one
that's
of the
right.
classic. That was one of the classic.
Dan Pastorini could throw the ball 80 yards, but he couldn't throw it 10.
They s- Run the run and shoot with
Yeah.
Ernest give. Oh my God, I can't go back to those days. That's just painful for me. So okay, we're coming up to the off season. I think there's two questions I'd like to see. I'd like to hear you answer, and I'm curious what your thoughts are because I think we agree on this, and that is, will these two people return? Will Joe Espada return as manager? Will Dana Brown return as general manager?
Whew.
Now, Dana Brown does not have a contract for 2026. He said the other day
Joe does.
he didn't want to talk about it, and Dana Brown said, "I can tell you, I am the general manager of the Houston Astros, and I expect to stay that way."
Yeah. Well,
But
he
where,
should. I mean, that's
yeah,
he's the general manager until he's not.
right,
Joe
exactly.
Espada's the manager until he's not.
But I
I
guess the
expect
question is,
Joe
who's?
Espada to come back.
I agree
Okay.
with you. I don't
I
think there's
think that
the way he
there's been
juggled this team. Good Lord.
well, and listen, the way the trend in Major League Baseball, we've talked about this a
Hmm.
couple times already in this podcast, is that even the in-game moves aren't
Hmm.
100% the manager. It's not the
Right.
coaching staff. It's a
No.
conglomeration of the whole organization, the
Yes.
data, the analytics department, even the medical staff.
Development
One of the
guys.
things that
Everybody's
Dusty
involved.
used to love to tell us in post-game sound, well, I had 5 guys in the bullpen that I couldn't go to today. Well, who
Right.
told him that? That's the medical staff.
Medical staff, right.
So, you know, I think that Joe, and I know that especially when they weren't playing well early in the season, Joe Spot lost the clubhouse. He never lost the
No.
clubhouse. Listen, he was beloved
Yeah, they love
as a
him.
coach. And so he knew, and he did it for so long, whether it was a coach and then as
Mhm.
a bench coach. It was he was the right guy for the job.
Right.
He waited his turn, and
Yep.
I think he's actually done a pretty good job.
I do too.
And when you have as many IL stints, you have as
Yes.
many players coming and going, and everything that's gone on. I think he's really. The crazy thing is there was talk a couple weeks ago about him being on the short list for manager of the year,
Yeah.
but
Until
then
the last 2
you
weeks.
click the station ones to the right and you go, okay, they're talking about him losing his job,
I
which
think,
isn't
well,
unprecedented because I
no, it's
think
the
Joe
absolute
Girardi won
right.
Manager of the Year and then got fired.
I think when you look at the team, the way he had to juggle what he had to juggle,
Yeah,
um, you can question some of his in-game decisions and things like that. Although I think personally, as a tactician, he was better this year than in previous seasons. Um, and I think that you can look to the team as a whole, and the fact that he was able to bring along some younger guys and say, "Hey, that he did a good job."
yeah.
But and the same thing I kind of think goes for Dana Brown. I'm not sure you can axe him yet. Now, is he going to get a long deal? I don't, probably not. But I
Well,
think that
listen,
you're still
Brian
building upon it.
Cashman was under 1 year deals for
Oh,
like
right.
20 years. I mean,
Classic.
you know,
I remember that.
yeah,
That was
I mean it, and so he had to sweat it out, and there were many times that George let him sweat it out,
yeah.
George
I know.
Steinbrenner,
Well, George
but
Steinbrenner,
it
legend.
always came back, and so I think that, and again, to go back to what we said earlier,
Hmm.
this was really his first year in being
Yeah.
able to put a team together. There were some financial restraints. There
All
was
sorts of
many
stuff.
things he has to put up with. Um, I mean, would it be a complete and total shock to see him not come back? No, because
No.
that's just the nature of the sport.
Hmm.
The team didn't make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, so somebody's got to go.
Right.
But I think that cooler, calmer heads will prevail, and I think Dana will be back also.
I agree. I think if you're going to see anybody lose jobs, I think you can look to. I think there will be shuffling of the development staff for sure.
Could
With
be.
all of the different injuries, even though I don't think it's necessarily all their fault, somebody's going to have to probably pay for that. I think it might be the end of the road for their hitting coach Snitker, just simply because they just were so bad this year in so many respects
Yeah,
with that. I could see them changing out hitting coaches, although I don't know how effective that's necessarily going to be with the same players.
yeah,
But yeah, I think for me, I think the biggest evaluation they need to make is within the team's medical development
yeah,
protocol, not necessarily the staff, but when you had multiple guys come back and then go back out, like
Right.
the obvious one being Jake Myers and then Luis Garcia. That Chandler Rome has written about the protocol, the return to play protocols. They have to be scrutinized this offseason because this is not the first year
Sure.
that that's been a problem.
But, that to tell you the truth, and
Hmm.
listen, neither one of us are in the closed door meetings
Nope.
and know how any of that goes.
Neither of us are medical
But
doctors.
a lot of time, yeah, but did stay at a Holiday Inn Express yesterday.
That's right. That's right.
But I would say a lot of times that's the low man on the totem pole. Same thing with the hitting coaches,
Hmm.
because a hitting coach that they bring in, it's going to be a data driven,
Yep.
analytics driven guy, just like, because that's who the coaching staffs are
That's right.
now. So, do are changes going to be made? Probably.
Yep.
Okay. Do they deserve it? Maybe. There's conversation there, but um, you also have to see. We got to also remember the grass is not always greener on the other
Right.
side of the fence, and so we'll have to wait and see. But you go all the way back to spring training, and we talk about this team. Even if they
Hmm.
had all their horses, Jordan didn't have the wrist injury in spring training and
Right.
lose basically the whole season. Pena didn't have the oblique issue.
Hmm.
Even if all they had everybody that they wanted, Altuve was a little bit of a roller coaster this
He was.
year. Even if everybody was doing, I still thought this team was going to be limited offensively.
I did too. I think we
So
talked
I
about
think
that.
we absolutely did. I think that going into that, so uh, looking at the end and go, well, this has happened, this, X, Y, and Z happened, so somebody's got to pay. Okay, I mean that's the nature of the sport. But picking on the hitting coaches, picking on the
Yeah,
medical staff, a lot of times that's just the low guy on the totem pole.
I agree. I don't think it's so much the staff. I do think it will be worth a deep dive into seeing how they make their decisions when it comes to injuries.
True.
Maybe not
But
necessarily changing out the
the other side of
people,
this is
but
you also have to remember a lot of that is put on the players.
oh, for sure. Above
And
above them.
so
Yeah, if they tell you they're
that
fine and they're not fine, I mean
that's right.
that's
That's right. Because
that
players are
happens.
always going to fight, almost always are going to fight to get back into the
Right.
lineup as quick as possible.
Yeah,
Heck,
I
I
think
did
there's no
it my
doubt.
last year. I pulled a quad, my left quad, and I came back right before it was stupid. Excuse me. Even at my advanced age, I came back like a couple days before the All Star break, which I should have just continued to take it off. Then I had the whole All Star break. But even when I pitched, I had told my whole infielder, I am not getting off the dirt. If there's a bunt, if there's anything, you guys got it all because I can't move. And I'm like, well, why the heck am I out here if I can't move? But
Yeah,
that's the player's mentality to
it
get back on
is.
the field.
And I agree with you. The main thing for me is maybe they need slightly stricter. I don't know what their internal protocol
And to tell you
is.
the truth, it's always been that way. I've said
Yeah.
this for years in the pre and post game is that this team is usually ultra conservative on bringing
Mm.
guys
You
back.
would
As soon
think.
as the player says I'm ready, they give them an extra couple days, they give them an
Mhm.
extra series, whatever. But yeah, this year was a different
It was
year,
a
and
different
so
it was a beast.
to tell you the truth, I don't know if you could really put your finger on what the problem was. It was
I
probably a
agree.
bunch of little
I
issues.
agree, and all the injury. I mean, look, some of the injuries, there nothing you could have done about them anyway.
Right.
I again, I just think what it sets up is a really interesting winter, because I do think there's going to be a lot of soul searching inside that building. This is a team that's not used to missing the postseason. It's certainly not a team that's used to, let's call it, instability in the roster, because
Yeah.
not just from injury, but because we're not really sure who's going to,
Right.
we have a few solid pieces. We know
Sure.
this guy's here, but there's a lot of that's kind of in flux.
It's still the second half of the lineup.
It is. And so this is not a team that's really used to that. They've tended to find ways to plug
Right.
those holes. So it'll be fascinating to watch. We'll be
It
watching
will.
it with everybody, of course. Thanks everybody for watching and listening and
Yeah. And
participating
next
and whatnot.
week we will delve into the postseason. It's already
Yes,
started off pretty cool. A lot of pitching dominating Hill early in the
absolutely.
wild card series, but
And 3 of the 4 wild card series going to a decisive 3rd game,
That's
all of
you know
them
what? I
today.
want every
Me
series to
too.
go to the max.
Me too.
Every
As
series.
long as all the teams that I actually wanna win, you know?
Well, I'm not
I
rooting
mean,
for anybody in particular. I just want because listen,
are you
after the
rooting
last
against anyone? S
probably not that either.
Yeah,
Nah.
yeah.
I just want as much baseball as we can get
Yeah.
because as soon as the World Series over, we'll see you in the spring.
Yeah, it's gonna be it is, I think, gonna be a real I think as we've talked about, this postseason is particularly interesting because there's no real front runner. I mean,
There's
the
no
Dodgers are
dominant
really,
team.
really good, but
There's no
not
dominant
really.
team.
Nobody's dominating. So
Yeah.
we'll see. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you next week. As always, go Astros.